This time it's on commercial kitchen ventilation. As you might have seen, there's just a pop-up come up to let you know that we're recording today's session. So if you are shy or modest and you want to turn your camera off, please feel free. The numbers of participants today is a record number for us, so these keep going up. So thank you very much for joining us. Hope it's worth your time. I'm Kerry Thomas. I'm the current president of NAFIS, and I'll just be the MC for today, but you'll have some more expert people talking to you about commercial kitchen ventilation than me. So just might move on and introduce them. So firstly, we have the main presenter today is Akram Suleiman. He's from Eco Canopy Australia in Melbourne. Akram's going to basically take you through the majority of the presentation, referring mainly to the Australian standards. We've also got Jacques Moran from Phoenix. Jacques is here just in case there's any questions around ventilated ceilings. We haven't got that as a topic matter today, and we're thinking about having that as a future topic matter for an NAFIS presentation. So if you're interested in that, please let us know, along with if there's anything else you're interested in future presentations on from NAFIS. Finally, we have a guest on board, Rob Lord from Seed Engineers here in Queensland. Rob isn't presenting, but he's here as an independent engineer specialising in mechanical design, who can answer any questions from an impartial perspective where he may add some value to the conversation. So I really appreciate, Rob, you joining us today. Just some other rules around today. You probably will have noted we've muted most people, and you can unmute if you need to, but just to try and keep that background noise, we'd prefer it if you didn't. If you have any questions, can you please use the chat button down the middle of the screen, down the bottom, just to ask some questions, and we'll break occasionally and ask those questions on your behalf and answer them through the presenters. We'll also have a session at the end, if you don't want to use the chat, where we can open the microphones and have some question and answers at the very end as well. So hopefully that's all relatively clear. I'll now pass over to Akram, who will take you through the presentation. Thank you, Akram.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can all see my screen.
It's all good, thanks.
Okay. So the Australian standard for ventilation in Australia, it's called AS 1668.2, and we're up to the 2012 version. So the heading of the standard is the use of ventilation and air conditioning in buildings, part 2, mechanical ventilation in buildings. I'm just going to quote from the standard so that everyone understands what the purpose of the standard is. The objective of this standard is to provide users with minimum design parameters and guidelines for determining ventilation rates for general application in buildings. This standard has been prepared for reference in the National Construction Code. The standard is quite large. It covers obviously multiple portions of ventilation, other than not just kitchen ventilation. So kitchen ventilation is just a small portion of this standard. Just a bit of background, it was first published in 1976, and we're up to the 5th edition, which is the 2012 edition. It has been amended over the course of the years, and it was last amended in 2016, but it's still considered the 2012 edition. Okay. Just a quick summary on what today's topics are. Obviously, the standard, as I said, is quite vast, and even in the kitchen ventilation segment, that's quite vast as well. So we've picked up a couple of key topics that, with popular demand, we thought would be quite useful to everyone. So the first topic is minimum equipment overhangs. So we'll be discussing the minimum equipment overhangs for typical appliances. So we'll discuss that with the different types of appliances and the overhangs from the sides and the front. And we're also going to be talking about kitchen exhaust hood filters. So we'll identify some common filter types and then the distances required from the specific appliances. Another topic is the kitchen renovations and what are the rules around when you're renovating your kitchen with regards to the ventilation system. Another popular one was solid fuel appliances. As we know, they're all the rage these days. There's a solid fuel kitchen appliance going into every kitchen almost. So we'll discuss what the Australian standard states about that. Yeah, so to keep things quite brief, we will be focusing on what the standard says as opposed to anything external, but I will make mention of certain possibilities around that to help sort of work and get a project on the go. We'll also be touching on fire suppression systems. It's just going to be a brief summary. We're hoping to do a full-blown webinar on fire suppression systems down the track. And lastly, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Okay. So the first topic, minimum overhangs. So I hope you can all see this. So this is a kitchen exhaust that we've got shown with front elevation and a side elevation. So for appliances such as fryers, cooktops, fast cookers, kettles, pans, salamanders, your minimum overhang on the side is 150 mil to the inside of the hood. Okay, so that's on both sides. And then from the front of the hood to the front of the appliance, you're required to have another 150 mil. Now this once again is to the inside of the hood. Okay. And looking at a different set of appliances, so side hinged door ovens, so combi ovens, convection ovens that are hinged on the side. And this also includes Asian cooking tables such as woks. They require a 300 mil side overhang, so that's on the left and the right hand side. You need 300 mil to the inside of the hood. And then you require 450 mil from the front of that appliance. So say it was a wok, from the front of that appliance to the inside edge of the front of the hood. That's 450 mil. Okay. Moving on, looking at bottom hinged oven doors. So tech ovens, pizza ovens, where the hinge of the door is at the bottom, and you've got the possibility of opening it and leaving food on that door as well. So the minimum overhang for them is 300 mil on the side, so that's left to right, to the inside of the hood, and 300 mil from the front of the appliance to the inside front edge of the hood as well. Now, for bottom hinged door ovens specifically, you're required to have that 300 mil calculated from when the door is open. So the leading edge of the door, once it's open horizontally, to the inside of the hood. So for solid fuel cooking appliances, the minimum overhangs here from left to right are 300 mil. And frontal overhang, the minimum frontal overhang requirement is 300 mil from the front of the appliance to the inside front of the hood. So this entails wood-fired grills, charcoal boilers, and even wood-fired pizza ovens. Keep note, these are the minimum overhangs. Sometimes you may require larger overhangs depending on the type of appliance. Moving on to dishwashers. The two dishwasher types that we're covering today are pass-through dishwashers, which are very common, and then conveyor style dishwashers. Now, the Australian standard requires a minimum 300 mil overhang from the dishwasher to the inside of the hood. That's on all three sides if you've got a wall hood. And then with a conveyor style dishwasher, it's 300 mil from the opening to the inside of the hood. And that's also on, if it's an island style, it would be on all four sides. If it's a wall, it would be on all three sides. So 300 mil overhang from the opening to the inside. Now, quite often with the with dishwashers, especially conveyor styles, if you've got a roller bench, you have the dishwasher hood overhang up to the edge of the roller bench as well. It just depends on what the consultant requires. Some points to consider regarding these overhangs. The overhangs stipulated in the Australian standard are to the inside of the hood. So if you've got a gutter that's 50 mil and your minimum overhang is 150, it'll be 150 plus 50 mil. That would entail the overall size of the hood. Because when people talk about overall sizes of the hood, that includes your gutter. But the Australian standard for the overhang is to the inside of that hood. Sorry. And the overhang stipulated are minimum dimensions. So at minimum, you need those dimensions. You can go larger, but obviously that will affect airflows. Now, there are hoods that have slightly wider gutters, or they've got plenum. So if you've got a supply air plenum in the front of the hood, as you can imagine, the front of the hood is going to be a lot deeper. So if your overhang requirement is 150 mil to the front of the hood, and then you've got your plenum, which is say another 150 mil. So then you'd be looking at a total overhang from the outside of the appliance to the outside of the hood of 300 mil. Okay. So you need to keep in mind that the external dimensions of the hood might be larger than what the internal overhang requirement is because of the size of that gutter or the size of that plenum in front of the hood. I'll just go back to one of these images quickly just to explain it a little bit better. So as you can see in this frontal overhang here, this hood here has a supply air plenum. Therefore, that front portion of the hood is quite wide. So even though the overhang here requirement for the appliance is 300 mil, once you add the front plenum, which could be another 100 mil or 150 mil, that's what entails your total external dimensions. Okay.
Akram, I might just pause you for a sec there if I can. So there's a few questions on those overhangs already, so I might just cover those off while we're in that area. It might be useful to you refer to the drawings again. So Adrian has asked, can you discuss whether an item, e.g. salamander or overshelves, can be placed above cooking bank items under the canopy? I have never been able to find out where it states this cannot happen.
Okay, so the Australian standard itself does not state that it can't be done, but in practice, what happens is quite often that it interferes with the smoke plume rising up to the filters, and it could also be considered a fire hazard if it is not maintained, because obviously grease can build up under the salamander or on the shelf of the salamander, which in the event of a flare-up could pose a significant risk. But the Australian standard itself doesn't state that it can't be done. There might be other standards that could mention that it could be an OH&S issue.
Might be worth bringing Rob in here if he's got any additional information or sort of advice on that from a mechanical engineering perspective. Hopefully he's there.
Sorry, I had myself muted.
That's okay.
So we often have salamanders placed above cooking bank items. I think Akram's comment, though, about fire safety is the only element that gives us pause for concern. So I don't think there is anywhere that says that it cannot happen. The Australian standard for ventilation, AS 1668, is one of these standards that's a bit, it's built to last, but it's also very draconian. So the way that they apply their calculations is that they assume in any one footprint there's only one piece of equipment. So this is one of the great challenges with this particular standard. Akram's company and other companies can sidestep this issue by using what is permitted in AS 1668, which is a calculation procedure called VDI 2052. I don't really want to side rail this conversation, but the VDI 2052 gives you an avenue for calculating the airflows, and that's what they're really nervous about, is the airflows with the salamander in. So I would tell, I think it was Adrian, that a salamander can be placed above a cooking item conditionally, which is really just about a kind of a common sense approach to fire. And then the calculation of that air quantity doesn't fit neatly into any AS 1668 calculation loops, but the code gives you permission to use an alternative standard, which generally, by the way, ends up with a fairly similar number, and that has the capability for you to add a salamander in. Does that answer the question?
That's great. That's really comprehensive. Thanks, Rob. I'll move on to the next question, which is
sorry, Kerry.
Sorry, Enzo. Yep, no problem.
I've got my hand up there. I needed to answer that question, and apologies, I had trouble logging in, so I've missed the first 5 minutes or so, but there is a requirement in the gas installation standard AS/NZS 5601 Part 1, installation above a source of cooking vapour, steam or grease, which reads, where a gas appliance other than a room-sealed appliance is to be installed above a source of cooking vapour, steam or grease, there shall be a clearance of at least 600 millimetres between the gas appliance and the source of cooking vapour, steam or grease. However, a gas appliance shall not be located vertically above a fryer, open flame cooking table, char grill or open flame barbecue.
Yeah, so that's right. Those are the fire issues. I mean, if the gas fitting was to leak, and meanwhile down below you've got your open flame source that's able to ignite that gas, you'll obviously clearly have a problem fairly quickly. We do see salamanders regularly by designers are actually placed above a bench, and I think that's just about the workflow. That they work on the food, they put it into the salamander, and they go and do something else. So we shouldn't see salamanders not being used in a cooking line, but all of those things that you've just identified are actually pretty real considerations. And wherever we see very small footprint kitchens, this is usually the bit of bad news they don't want to hear from us.
Great, thanks, Robin. Thanks, Enzo, for that clarification too. That's useful. I'll move on to the next question, which is a simpler one, which is what about broilers, gas broilers? I think he's referring to specific overhangs, if there are any, relating to gas broilers. Akram, do you want to chip in?
Yep. So with gas broilers, the ones so typically like